Hey, what's going on, everybody? Tom Henderson from RESGEN here, and I'm so glad that you're joining me for what is going to be another fantastic episode of the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast, where we hear stories and have conversations about life in Christ, integrating our faith into every area of our life, and talk about ways that we as men can give life to others, at home, at work, and in the community. My guest today has been a friend of mine for many, many years and is one of the most passionate dudes I know. Jon Setzer is a follower of Jesus, a husband to Marcy, a dad to 5 kids between the ages of 5 and 16, and the founder of Setzer Elite, a premier speed and agility training organization dedicated to building stronger athletes from the inside out. Jon is also a former collegiate and professional football player who has devoted his life to helping individuals, athletes, and teams unlock their full potential. On today's show, Jon and I chat about a ton of great stuff, including pursuing excellence in sports without making it an idol, the challenge of finding a balance between starting and building a business while also being a present husband and engaged dad, and what helps him keep Jesus at the center of everything in his life. We also talk about the decision he made to move his family back east several years ago, a decision that allowed him to spend some very important time with his dad prior to him suddenly passing away. I hope you're ready, because this episode is going to be a goodie. Here's my conversation with Jon Setzer. Jon Setzer, my brother, dude, welcome to the podcast.
Well, man, this is an honor and a privilege to be here. To be honest, the money that I slipped you for me to get on here, I'm joking. But dude, yeah, this is awesome, man, to be here. Thanks so much for the invite.
Well, listen, as I said in the intro, I mean, we've been friends for so many years. I think I said many. Like, I mean, it wasn't just one many's, it was two many's, but not too many. Okay,
not too many
many's.
many's.
Came out weird, but
couple many's.
But no, but seriously, like, we've been friends for so long, and we've done ministry alongside one another. You've been a part of so many events that RESGEN has done. And we've talked about the right timing to have you on the podcast. And with all these things, I really do try to listen to the Lord and say, what is the timing that God has for certain guests, for certain speakers at different events that RESGEN puts on, all that kind of stuff. And I really do feel like this is the right time, because with you entering a new season with the new business that you launched, and just, you know, with where your kids are at in their lives, we're gonna have a really fun and hopefully helpful conversation with everybody. So thanks for saying yes.
I mean, and whether or not they enjoy it, we're going to enjoy it. So hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you're not cool anyway. So.
Oh man. Okay. Well, hey, dude. Before we even get started, this is going to be an introduction to who you are to some other listeners. So I would just love for you to give a quick little snapshot, not the full bio. Okay. When I said, "Hey, send me a bio," now if you could tell me, I could bring this up on my phone. I mean, I got to scroll multiple times.
Okay, just give it one scroll.
I told Jon, I said, I've never seen so many adjectives in one bio. But anyway, no, dude, I'd love just who you are. Your family, and just kind of a little bit intro of what you do, because that's what we're going to really dig into that. But sure. Intro yourself.
Okay, so as you guys can see across the screen, my name is Jon Setzer, originally from the North Carolina. And no, I am not a UNC Chapel Hill fan. I am a Duke fan, and yeah, my boys are looking good right now. But yeah, so I am a son, a father, a friend. Married to the love of my life, Marcy. We have 5 beautiful kids together, and yes, I'm only 37, but yes, we do have 5 kids, and it's just been awesome, man. It has literally been a journey, and the game of football brought me here to South Dakota, so I came here to play for Sioux Falls Storm a number of years ago, and we really just fell in love with the people.
Yeah.
And that's why we stayed. That's why we moved here.
Yeah.
Our roots.
So sports has always been a part of your life, right,
Oh, yeah.
Jon? I mean, so growing up as a kid, and a lot, and we're going to get into a lot of, I think, sports discussions today, because I'm really interested in helping me understand just the role that sports plays in our lives. But
Yes.
yeah, I think that in our culture today, in our family, sports can really become an idol. And so I'm sure you've maybe even experienced some of that in your own life.
Oh.
So I want to go back though, when you were a kid and you first started playing sports. So was that like pretty much right out of the womb? I mean, you came out with a football or what?
Well, if I had to tag a title to that part of my life, I would call it anger management.
Okay.
So, dude, I mean, and you know my story, but, I grew up in a very abusive home. Used to watch my mom and dad literally fight like cats and dogs all the time. And my escape was sports. And so literally anytime I could have a ball in my hand or be out competing or just get out some of that anger and frustration, like I did it. And so at times I was a little bit too competitive. And so I was introduced to this thing called a technical foul and a penalty flag. And literally I had this, there was this older referee from the community, and I'm in Little League basketball, and my cousin is going down on a fast break layup, and we're losing. And I literally pushed my cousin like into the pad. And so my aunt's looking at me like I'm crazy. My mom's looking at me. They're like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" Whatever. And dude's like, "If you get one more technical, you're done." And
he wasn't talking about just for that game.
No, he's like, done. Like, you're done in the league. I don't care how much money you paid, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was sports that really, I don't want to say saved my life, but sports really gave me an avenue to express myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So then you play sports all the way through high school and into college, and then you get going and you find out there's this arena football team. And so, I don't even know how like people get drafted into that kind of thing, but how did that happen where you ended up moving from the East Coast to Sioux Falls to play for the Sioux Falls Storm in the Indoor Professional Football League?
So I was actually, when I left college, long story short, some different things happened with my pro day, and I ended up getting invited to a CFL workout. So I actually went to Montreal in Canada, and I went to camp with Montreal, and it was hard for me to understand what they were saying because it's the French speaking. Quebec is a French speaking province up there, and so I didn't speak any French, and so it was kind of weird. But I did love the food; it was good. Anyway. And so I got cut from there, came home, and started teaching at Hickory High School and coaching football and basketball. And one of my friends that actually got picked up by the Sioux Falls Storm, he called me, he's like, "Dude, what are you doing with your life right now?" I'm like, "Bro, football is over. Like, I'm actually making money now. I'm not a broke college student anymore. Like being a teacher.
Yeah.
I was raking in the big bucks." And me and Marcy, everything was going great with us, small kids at the time. And I get this call, and my buddy's like, you just need to send me your film. Let's just see what happens. And so I send my film. Literally like 10 minutes later, I get a call from Tyler Peterson, who was the GM for the Sioux Falls Storm at the time. And he's like, "Hey man, we like your film. We want to bring you in." So they brought me in, and literally I get off the plane and it is -30. I have never felt that type of cold in life, in my entire life. And so I get off the plane and I turned around and got back on the plane. I was like, "No, y'all got to take me home." They're like, "This is your stop. Get off this regional jet and go inside." So literally I got off, went inside, and just started meeting people and connecting.
Yeah.
And that's how, I came here to play for the Sioux Falls Storm.
Yeah.
And made the team. At first, it was tough because we were loaded. I mean, as you know, the Sioux Falls Storm, 10 plus championships.
Yeah.
Won a lot of, indoor championships there, and so had to come in and compete. Made the team. 2 months after being here, I'm talking to my wife every single day about how the people here aren't racist and how they're really nice, and how I'm like, but I don't know if they want something from me or not.
Okay.
And they didn't want anything from me. They just were nice people and wanted to help. And I'm like, I like it here. She's like, "Well, if you like it there so much, why don't we just move there?" And I'm like, this is my exact words, "Are you high?" And no, my wife doesn't do drugs, but I'm like, it was -30 when I got off the plane. Like, you're from close to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Are you serious? And anyway, man, and we came here, came here to play for the Storm and
Yeah.
loved it.
And even just that statement from Marcy, I mean, is really a testament to, I mean, the commitment that you have to one another, and just,
Oh
I mean,
man,
the just the relationship that I've been able to see, the way that you, just the focus that you put on one another, the focus that you put on your family, is just really special. And for her to say, "Hey, listen, if you feel that that's a place that you want to be, then man, I'll follow you, and we'll go do that together, and we'll start a new adventure at 30 below zero." You know.
that sounds like a good movie.
Or a bad one, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
But even just, and we're going to get into this a little bit too. I keep on like foreshadowing everything that's to come in this conversation. But then even like, okay, now we're going to move back to the East Coast. Then you move back to Sioux Falls. And I mean, so you guys have just, traveled that same interstate to and from Carolinas to here, a couple different times, which is very similar to even to Laura's and my trip. We went west, we went to Portland, Oregon. And then, 6 years later, the Lord brought us back to Sioux Falls, which was like kind of a crazy journey as well. But when you look back on those things, and I know you do this as well, John, is that you can really, even though it may not make a lot of sense at the time, and you may not exactly understand why things are happening or how it's going to turn out, you can look back and say, "Oh, I get it now."
Right.
And you see the hand of God guiding that.
Oh, dude. And it was exactly one of those seasons,
Yeah.
So we're here. Everything is going great. I'm working for, I was at Collision for a little while. And then I actually was the site director for a ministry called Hope Harbor. And Hope Harbor is a great ministry. Collision's great ministry. And it was in that time that we had just got the boys home going in Parker, South Dakota. Yes, I lived in Parker. So all of my Parker people, Parker, South Dakota people, thank you so much for your love and encouragement. I mean, the community was great. And literally we got the home up. Boys are starting to come in. We're helping families. And then the Lord says, "This isn't your baby. You need to go home."
Yeah.
And at first I thought it was just bad food. I'm like, "Oh yeah, whatever." Because, you feel those promptings. And those promptings is something that the Lord has really used throughout my life to nudge me in the right direction. And I'm sure that you felt the same thing, like even with the summit and the growth of the summit and everything that has happened, with your ministry, which is just mind blowing to see. And I get to this point to where it's like, okay, it's time to make a decision. And my wife, she even says, she's like, "Man, I've been having these dreams. I've been having the Lord's been speaking to me for like a year that we need to go home." So, I turned in my resignation letter, to Hope Harbor, packed up everything that we had here, and literally went back home.
Right. And what year was that? Because
I want to say what year was COVID?
2020.
2020. So we got out of the car, started unpacking stuff, walked in the house. Newsflash, COVID-19,
Yeah.
blah, 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 whatever.
So March
and literally,
2020.
So the day that we got there, COVID shut everything down.
Okay. So let me just paint a little bit more of the picture for people to kind of catch them up to speed. So you wrapped up your career with the Storm. You're working in ministry here. Feeling like the Lord has you in the right spots. You're leading the organization, Hope Harbor, and building this home. And then just when you feel like things are kind of like, this is what we're supposed to do. We're experiencing some stability. We're setting down roots here. Both you and Marcy begin to feel this nudge from the Lord saying, "Hey, listen, I want you to go east again, back home." For what, was there any reason as to why you felt you needed to go back home at that time? Like that either of you said and this is why?
At the moment, I had no idea what that was. We just felt like, okay, the Lord's calling us back home. Maybe he's calling us back home to be closer to family for some time, because, most of our kids were born here.
Yeah.
So we don't get back home as much. And so I'm there. I get an opportunity to have my own State Farm agency. And now prior to that, I had no insurance background. I'm literally talking to this lady online, and she's like, "Hey, I like what I'm seeing on your profile. Yeah, time for a call. So I called her, we talked, and she's like, man, I really like you a lot. I want to expedite your process. And those words were something that I feel like the Lord has kind of marked in my life a little bit, something that I've seen a little bit, just seeing the Lord's hand accelerating things and moving things in my life. And so we had the agency, just full transparency. I'm making more money now in a month than what I was making in a year, in ministry.
Yeah.
And so it was great financially. And you always tell yourself when you work in ministry, like, man, if I could just get to more money, or if I could just make more money, like this would be different, that would be different. And I got to the point to where I would put my key in the door in the morning, and the sun would be coming up, and I put my key in the door to lock up at night, and the sun would be going down. And I started to feel like, maybe this isn't it. And as I'm feeling this, I get a call from my stepmother frantically, and she's just going, John, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say right now, but your dad, he's not here anymore. And I'm like, where'd he go?
Yeah.
I mean, and she's like, your dad passed away about an hour ago. And in that moment, dude, I just remember like just breaking down uncontrollably, like, because me and my dad, we talked every day. Like, me and my dad, we had a great relationship. And in that moment, I knew why the Lord called us home. I mean, he was 56, young guy, healthy, no pre-existing conditions, no health issues. And just for him to pass away in that way was just something that I just couldn't wrap my mind around. And so, I got on the phone, I called you, I talked with you, I talked with, Charlie Sanders, Pastor Quentin. I mean, there were so many just friends, Ben Weiner, some good friends that I would just call and just like, man, I just need, if I could just get the ministry of presence right now.
Yeah.
You guys just listen. I mean, I remember talking with you, you're just listening, like, John, I'm just here to listen. I don't have any words, I don't have anything, I'm just here to listen. And you're talking and you're venting, and in that, I felt like what the Lord was showing me was that, man, I gave you this gift for you to come back and spend some time with your dad. And all these images, even those images going through my head right now of every picture that you see my dad, he's holding the girls.
Yeah.
And they're just rubbing his head and rubbing his face, playing with his lips, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just seeing my dad have that opportunity to be grand.
Yeah.
To be a grandfather and be with his grandkids. I mean, that was one of the greatest gifts the Lord's ever given me.
Yeah. So how long did you have with him from the time that you got out of the car and unpacked the car mid-March 2020 to the time that he passed? Refresh my memory.
Yeah, so it was probably about, I would say the total time was probably about a year. Yeah, probably about a year, because actually he died. We got there, well, a little under a year, because we got there in March, and then he passed away 3 days before his birthday.
Okay.
And so, man, new agency that just launched, dealing with my dad's stuff, man, trying to take care of all of these things. And I knew, me and Marcy, we just sat down and we talked and we cried and we talked and we cried. And we said, you know what? If God has given us the strength to make it through this hard of a time, COVID, new agency, dad passing away. And then on top of that, my dad didn't have life insurance. And I'm an insurance agent. And so, you probably can sense some of the condemnation that the devil tries to put in your mind there. And, and I did talk with my dad about, life insurance and some of those kind of things. So then, you're having to come up with, with those provisions and that kind of stuff. And it's just, it was a wild time, man.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up, John, about just how, the enemy, and let's be clear, Satan's the enemy.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, he hates us. He hates followers of Jesus. And he'll do anything that he can to get us to doubt, to get us to trip up, to tempt us to. And one of the things I think that, one of his his most like loved tactics, if I can put it that way, is to put those thoughts in our mind of, you didn't do enough, or, he's the accuser. He
Right.
accuses you of not doing what you should do as a son. Right. And I remember, when my dad passed away, this past year, and just going on a walk on the bike trail and just kind of having some alone time with the Lord, and just crying and dealing with all the emotions that just those kinds of things go up, and regrets that you have, or conversations that you wish you would have had, or that you wish would have gone better, or whatever, right? And just feeling like these thoughts enter my brain that they're not from the Lord,
Right.
but and they're from the evil one, from the enemy, but yet they're still enter your brain. You got to figure out, okay, how do I get these out quickly? And for me, it was one of this, you do all these things to reach men, and you couldn't even help your dad, and so I think that's such a good reminder that you just gave us, is saying that, the enemy's going to attack us in any way that he can, and he loves to attack us in our weaknesses.
Oh yeah.
But that for us to remember that it's in our weakness that Christ is strong. So are we running to Christ in our weak moments? Obviously we need to all the time, but especially in those weak moments. So as you experienced just that season, specifically with your dad passing, and the reality is that whether a person has a great relationship with their dad, or a relationship that's not as great, there's still something about it's still your dad.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, what kind of emotions, and just, take me there as far as like, what did you feel at that moment? And like when you knew that you weren't going to see your dad again, and then where did you feel like the Lord was, and how did God specifically minister to you personally?
Yeah. Excuse me. And I think the primary emotion that I had in that moment was, I have to take care of business. So I compartmentalized everything. I didn't have time for emotion, to be honest. It's like I had that first initial outburst when I got the news, and I'm on the floor, and Marcy's holding me, that's my girl, man. That's my girl. I love her, and it was literally, you have to take care of business, and you got to handle what is in front of you right now. And I'm like, you know what? I'll handle that later. And I remember in that moment, man, just like, I just wish I could be vulnerable right now. And that night, I called you, I called Charlie, I called, a lot of my friends, and I was able to be vulnerable in that night. But then I had to put my business hat on. It's like, John, you got an agency that the doors need to come open. If they don't come open, guess what? People don't eat. People don't get paid. Policies don't get, there's other people that might have a life or death situation. They might need their car. So I had duties and things that I had to handle. And man, I remember I got this business hat on, and and one of my buddies, and I won't say his name because he would hate me if I said his name, but one of my friends called me. He's like, dude, you're building an agency right now. You're trying to take care of your dad's stuff. You know what? Give me the funeral home's number, and I'll take care of everything. And my good friend, one of my best friends in the world, literally called the funeral home, paid for everything, all the pictures and all the burial stuff, just took care of everything. And that took so much off of my plate.
Yeah, what a gift. What a gift.
And what the Lord was really, I think, as I got closer to the day of the funeral, he was teaching me, man, the value of vulnerability. We talk about this a lot, like that authenticity. And because if you can't get vulnerable with another brother, if you can't get vulnerable on this walk, on this thing that we call life, because as you know, this journey is hard, and there's some days on this journey it sucks. And that was what the Lord was really showing me in that. And then he's also showing me that I know what I'm doing. I didn't call you here for no reason. I called you here because you needed to be with your dad, and I didn't ever want you to have to deal with that condemnation of living your life going, I should have got home more. I should have came home more. I should have came and seen him or my mom more. I should have been here more. Well, why wasn't I here? But I was there, and I was able to take care of things. And then on top of that, my older brother, Nick, he's an Apache pilot, and he was deploying in a week. He's like, bro, I can't I'm going to war. I can't focus on this right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to handle this.
Yeah.
And I'm the little brother.
Yeah.
Well, the little big brother
Yeah.
in this moment, I guess I feel like. But,
Yeah.
So I was able to, to get things taken care of. And then after that, the Lord really just ministered to me.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after that the Lord said, okay, you're done.
Yeah. And so at that point, you decide that you're going to shut the doors to the new agency, an agency that you felt like obviously the Lord allowed you to start, expedited the process. So the decision to shut the doors of that and to move back to 30 below zero. So tell me about just that decision process and saying, okay, now, we're gonna move back to the Midwest.
Yeah. So, I'm in this process. I'm thinking, we're rolling things over in our mind. Marcy, she's feeling like the Lord is speaking some things to her, but she's still keeping it kind of close to the chest a little bit, because she doesn't want to influence me in any way, because she's my biggest supporter. She's my biggest cheerleader. Like, Marcy is awesome. And I just remember having a conversation with my sales leader, and it wasn't a great conversation, to be honest. She's like, well, we would really like to see your numbers be here, here, and here. And I'm talking to all of my friends back in South Dakota, and they're like, dude, you are killing it. Your numbers are great. But it was almost like, and I'm starting to see the writing on the wall a little bit, that like, man, like this is sales. And maybe with this sales leader, maybe enough is never going to be enough. And you love kids. Do you really want to be sitting behind a desk for the next 30 years? And it was in that moment that the Lord just started speaking to me. I'm having friends calling me. I'm getting different words from friends, and people just going, maybe the Lord is calling you out of this. I'm like, but how can I walk away from this type of money? And they said, if you walk away, the provision of the Lord will be wherever you're going. And so I put my resignation letter in October. Had no idea what was next. So we had October, November, December. So because we were just grinding hard all year, we said, you know what? We're going to take the kids to Disney World for Christmas. And if you want tears to come in your eyes, go to Disney World at Christmas, because it is magical.
It is magical.
Disney, I need my money. Just hook me up. I just gave y'all a little plug. Anyway. And so we were on this trip, just enjoying family. And I said, okay. I started calling my friends, like, hey, we're moving back. Ended up moving back to Sioux Falls January 7th. So I moved here twice in January, which is that's crazy.
We moved back to Sioux Falls January 12th, in 1999, and unloaded the truck at 14 below zero regular temp without the window. And that's, I think, the Lord's, it's like, like today, we're recording this on April 1st, April Fool's Day, and I think that the Lord's like, I ain't fooling with you. This is winter.
Oh my goodness. Oh, speaking of April 1st, man, this is the day when this thing happened, when this thing started, right? RESGEN, right?
15 years ago today, yeah.
15 years ago today, man. So that is, man, kudos to you and your wife and the testimony of what you guys have been able to do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I that's kind. But let's get back on here. So, no, we're grateful for all that the Lord has done and is doing. So, but okay, so you move back here in January, then you get involved in ministry again. But you and I, along that whole time, we were chatting, we were talking. I remember multiple conversations as I remember one in particular, John, where I was sitting in the Home Depot parking lot, and I think we had like a 45-minute to an hour-long conversation just about you. I mean, and who you are and who's God's created you to be, and your purpose, and what does God really want to do with you, and you having this feeling consistently of like, I just feel like I need to do something different, but yet I just don't know if I should or if I could or I can.
Can I tell the people your real words?
You can.
He says, so him and Marcy literally said the same exact thing. They're like, okay, John, if the Lord is speaking this to you, You either need to piss or get off the pot. Can I say that? Is that a bad word in South Dakota? You know, and in that, it was like just hearing those confirming words over and over and over from multiple people. And I didn't want God's grace for that season of my life to move. I wanted to be in the will of God, you know. And also, you know, at the time I was working at Lifelight, which is an amazing ministry here in the Midwest, and just seeing, you know, all of the great things that were happening there, all the great things that, you know, I was a part of building there. And then the Lord's like, nudge, it's time.
Yeah.
And that was hard. I think one of the hardest parts of that is not walking away from the relationships, but walking away from the perception of walking away from those relationships.
Oh, I think that that's a good point too, because I mean, again, sometimes we can not make a decision, or I mean, which is really making a decision, right?
Right.
On the fear of what other people think or on what they may perceive.
Oh, that was a huge one for me.
Yeah.
Because my personality is, I don't like to let people down. I don't think any of us like to let people down. Like as a father, you don't want your kids to feel like you let them down, or your wife to feel like you let them down, or even a friend, you know. And there's been so many times, you know, when you've called me, you know, getting ready for the summer, and you're like, dude, I need some prayer right now. And I'm just like, if Tom calls, I know that I need to answer the phone, because this is go time for him, you know. And I would never want you to call and then I'm like, well, dude, I don't have time right now, or me not answer the phone. So
well, and so and the other thing about just leaving a place is sometimes you're going to leave. God's going to call you to leave some place where you truly are having an impact. And you truly are seeing God's blessing in different ways. And that's not just like ministry wise. It could be relationally, it could be financially, it could be, you know, socially, whatever. But God may say, hey, listen, when I told you to follow me, it wasn't, you know, follow me if it's
right.
I just said, follow me, period.
Mhm.
And so then we got to put our kind of our faith in action, the faith that we often, you know, talk about, right? And that we say other people should have, but then all of a sudden it's us that's then saying, okay, am I going to be a man of my word? Am I going to be a man of action? And watching you step out in faith to do this. And I remember saying, okay, here's what I want you to do. I gave you specifics. If you remember, Craig, I said, you got 30 days and I want you to put this plan together, and then we're going to revisit and I want to talk about it so that you can begin to just process what would it look like if when you take those steps. Because then it was a matter of time for you.
Right.
And just seeing just God's plan unfold for you. And as you launch Setzer Elite, which we're going to get to here in just a minute to talk a little bit about that. It's really been such a joy to watch and number one, just watch you in your sweet spot and the joy that you have as you work. And I know they say, you know, if you enjoy what you do, you don't work a day in your life. You're still working a day in your life.
You're working.
You're grinding. But there is a joy that comes because you're doing that. And the influence that that's having on so many kids and families has been really fun.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Tom, and speaking of that, I didn't bring up Elite. He brought it up. So let's talk about Setzer Elite a little bit. And so, you know, at my program, you know, one of the biggest parts of what we do is the character development and the spiritual development aspect.
Yeah.
There's many great training programs in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I mean, you got some of the other ones. I'm not going to name them.
Well,
but
there are. You're right.
You know,
I mean, to be clear, I mean, there is no shortage of whether it's acceleration programs, this training from. I mean, basically, you can have your 2-year-old in in some sort of teaching them how to crawl in the Olympics, you know, or something like that. I guess if they're still crawling, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, listen, I'm not a Setzer Elite guy. I need to be, I mean, obviously look at me compared to you. I need to get in there for some trainings. What can you do for a 49-year-old man?
Oh,
I
we
mean,
can make some things
okay.
happen.
All right. Okay. I'm going to hold you to that. But so there's no shortage of those, but even as I shared in the intro prior to us having this conversation, is that your focus is really helping develop athletes from the inside out.
100%.
And so
Yep.
tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, because that's an intentional statement that then you back up with action.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So tell me what that means and how does that work?
Yeah. So, I make this decision, to leave Life Light to transition into Setzer Elite. Something that was really pushing that decision, and to be honest, it wasn't you or any of my friends going, hey, you need to do this. It was you guys going, hey, what is the Lord saying to you?
Mhm.
And then I would tell you what the Lord is saying. And then you say, okay, so if the Lord is telling you this, partial obedience is the same as disobedience.
Mhm.
So if he's telling you this, if he's shifting this in you, when are you going to make that next step of faith? And so I just had to make sure that we cleared the air on that, because I didn't want people thinking that I left because you pushed me and made me leave or something like that.
Well, but that's an interesting point, though. I just had this conversation with another guy at lunch yesterday where I was talking about, I remember when I started ResGen, 15 years ago now. And I remember a friend telling me, Tom, here's the deal. You just need to know, this is something that sounds so simple and we all say it, but you're going to understand it to a new level. And I remember talking with you about this, and it's the Lord that's your provider. See, the temptation that any of us feel,
Comfortability.
whether it's in full-time ministry or business or whatever, is to look at our job, to look at, the next client that you have, the next, insurance policy you're able to write, this company, to look at that as our provider. No,
Right.
the Lord uses those things, but it's the Lord that's our provider. And so if we truly trust in the Lord to be our provider, the Lord that the scripture says that I mean, he takes care of the lilies of the field. He provides for every bird in the air, but yet how much more will he take care of you and I, right?
Right.
So if we truly believe that, then that gives us all of a sudden this confidence that we can step out in faith. And what you did was so important, though, is because what you did was you sought wisdom from what I call the council of saints. You had trusted brothers and sisters in Christ who knew you and that you could have conversation with, because, we want to step forward in faith, but we also want to step forward in wisdom.
Right.
Right.
100%.
And so,
Yeah.
that's what I feel like you were really diligent and focused on doing. And then it comes time to saying, okay, yep, now let's go. And we still don't have all the X's crossed, all the T's crossed and all the I's, dotted. There's still some unknowns, but that's what faith is all about. But we know that this is what we're stepping into. And we know that we're not going along alone, because we have people that are stepping into it with us.
Right.
Prayer, support, saying, I mean, I'm sure you had several people, my kids are old, but, I'm sure you had several people saying, hey, you can train my kid.
Yeah.
You can tell my kid how to run fast, or whatever. So anyway, that's such a cool thing. So you're developing this program, you're developing the business plan. So tell me about that and how you go about doing Setzer Elite that makes it different.
Yeah.
And it really helps athletes from the inside out.
Yeah. I was I was sitting down with two good friends of mine, Heather Kittleson, Jeremy Brown, both of them. And and I just remember sitting and talking with them, and I'm like, what do you guys think about this idea? What do you think about, peeling the face of idolatry off of sports and getting it back pure to what it is, getting these athletes to really love training and to love, and to love glorifying God with their gifts and talents, and it not being so much about them and the arrogance and the ego and the self-centeredness. And I'm starting to talk about this, and I remember Heather looked at me and she's like, that's it. This is it. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And she could see that joy and that passion that's coming from me. And so, when it comes to Setzer Elite and the way that we do things, I feel like that we see every athlete. And what I mean by that is, I see you not because of just what you can do. I see you through the challenges. I see you working and developing, and we're doing something that's really, really hard, but I'm just pushing you just a little bit because I want to see that character develop in you. I want to see that leadership develop. And before every workout, excuse me, we have a word of the day. We do a quick devo, and then we pray. And we do that before every single workout. And some people might think that it's too churchy or too preachy, but I was a suicidal kid growing up. And I know what faith did to my life. I know what faith and sports combined did for me in my life. And personally, at one point, and it's just a moment of transparency, sports was an idol for me. I remember having a dream the week before my pro day. This is crazy. The week before my pro day, and Jesus came to me and he said, if I asked you to walk away from football right now, would you? And I said, absolutely not. Because I couldn't lie to him. I said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I showed up for my pro day at Wake Forest University the next week, and they said, Mr. Setzer, we know exactly who you are. We've watched you play. But unfortunately, we got every NFL team here, and you're not on the list. And he looked at me and said, good luck. And now at this point, my godbrother, William Hayes, who played for the Rams, played for the Titans, played for Miami, had paid for all of my training, my car, had paid for everything. I mean, hot yoga, massages, all my meals, all of my gas, had paid for everything. So I was prepped and ready for this pro day. And I go there and they say, you're not on the list. Good luck. And it was in that moment that I realized that sports, they're great. They're a great servant. They're a great servant to help you get to a financial goal or to help you develop character, develop leadership. They're a great tool, but they're a horrible God. And that's when my life changed. And I started to look at sports different. And I don't want any of these kids to fall into that.
Dude, that is so good. I mean, tell me you use that line. I mean, I know that and here's the deal. It's not just a line. It's not just a good tweet, right? But, sports is a tool. It's a good tool, but not a God, not a good God. And man, that is so important. And if you can teach kids at a young age who have aspirations to be pro, right? And listen, have those dreams, have those aspirations, allow those things to be a driving force as you try to compete and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is if that is your God, that God will not serve you well.
Oh no.
And at the end of the day, we end up serving the God that we worship. And you will end up worshiping at the altar of sports, and not at the altar of the one that we are created to worship in front of. And so for you, let me ask you this, because, with the primacy of sports in our culture, and with the parents that have, and I'm not saying this is obviously, wrong to do by any means, but when we have kids that their whole life is sports from the time, sometimes some of them are 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 years old. What are some things that parents can do to help sports not become an idol for their kids? You know what I mean? Because listen, we all want our kids to do well. My son, as you know, Chase runs collegiately. He runs year round, cross, indoor track.
Still buying all those pairs of shoes.
Well, unfortunately for him, he ended up getting hurt, and he's going to run in his first track meet in about a year on Saturday. We're so excited to watch him run again. Yep, we're gonna drive several hours to watch him run for less than 2 minutes. But we're so excited to do it. But I remember having multiple conversations with him just about running and how much of his identity, and we had very candid conversations about this, about how his identity really became as a runner.
Right.
And we had some phenomenal conversations, John, where he was just like saying, Dad, like when he got hurt and it's all training.
I can only imagine.
It's all stretching. It's all, going to see the trainer all the time, and he can't even compete, right? He's doing all the work, but he can't compete. And he's like, and I remember having some conversations with him. He said, well, Dad, I mean, I'm a runner. This is what I do. And who am I if I'm not running? And it gave us the opportunity to have a conversation about like, listen, if you could never run again, that doesn't change who you are.
Right.
And what do you think God's trying to teach you during this season where you are just training, where you are just stretching, where you are just healing? So what are some things that you like would advise for parents to do? Maybe what you do with your own kids, because I'm sure you got to take the coach hat off every once in a while.
Yeah.
Put the dad hat on.
Well, that's a really good point. That, you know what, I'm gonna play off that a little bit. That's a really good point you're making, because there's so many times when I would come home with the coach hat on, because I coach defensive backs at Sioux Falls Christian. I used to coach at Roosevelt basketball and football back in the days, and you come home with that coach's hat on. But I have 3 girls and 2 boys, and especially my girls, they need daddy. They don't care about Coach John. They don't care about any of that, the energy on the sideline, all that stuff. They don't care about that. I need daddy in this moment. And, my oldest daughter, Leslie, it has been such a joy coaching her over the years, but also to see what she was able to, with her team, accomplish this year. Because as you know, she hit the, the game winner for Sioux Falls Christian to win their first state championship for the girls. And nobody knows what was going on behind the scenes. The night before, she had rolled her ankle to where she couldn't even walk. And we're going, let's get on the prayer lines. And we have all these people praying for her. And she's like, Dad, keep praying for me. My ankle's feeling better. Keep praying for me. My ankle's feeling better. Keep praying for me. My ankle's feeling better. I run into her right before the game, and she's like, Dad, my ankle is 100%. It feels amazing. I'm ready to play. And she ended up having a monster game. She had like 14 points, 13 rebounds, and then the game winner.
Yeah.
And I was just so proud of her, but it wasn't even about the bucket.
Yeah.
It was about the prioritization of God first in her life. It wasn't, well, I need to go get more ice. I need to go get more tape. I need to go get, a shot in my ankle to numb it up so that I can play. It was, Dad, keep praying for me. Dad, keep praying for me. And when it comes to these youth sports, the best way that we can keep our kids from falling into idolatry, because now you got NIL deals.
Oh, yeah.
And so that has just created an altar under sports, because every parent is going, well, if my kid remotely has a chance, I need to invest in it. So now instead of them training 3 days a week, they're training 6 days a week. And I know kids that train 7 days a week. No joke. And what a parent can do in that moment is really take time and put the prioritization on God, right? So like we put the prioritization on God, family, occupation, recreation, right? And so when it comes to that, our kids need to see us actively doing that. If we're going, well, you know what? Well, instead of reading your Bible today, you need to go outside and hit baseballs. Like if we're doing our sport more than we're doing things with our relationship with God, something's always going to be out of balance there. I mean, and these kids, they're spending hours every week. So, hopefully I answered your, question for parents.
What you said there too, I don't want to, you said it real quickly. And so I don't want it to be glossed over, is you said they need to see us doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because, that modeling principle, just like we go out and we throw, like I remember, when I coached my boys in baseball, I was their SEBA, right? And we weren't on the travel teams. We weren't, but every night we'd be out there throwing baseballs together, right? And that was wonderful father-son time. we'd have conversation. Well, they would throw it as hard as they could, and I would throw it as hard as I could, and which I remember one time it was cut Zaire right in the chin, and I was like, I probably should have used that as not that. And I'm not throwing 89-mile-an-hour heaters, by the way, but at any rate, but that was just a regular occurrence. But then, how much time are we spending, in prayer or reading the Word together as a family? Are we also doing that as well as shooting hoops?
Oh, and you got
throwing baseball or all that kind of stuff. And so, because our modeling is so crucial to our kids' understanding, because they're gonna do as we did.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just a reality.
I mean, you think about the discipleship process, like sports, like even your son learning to run and the proper way to do this. Like when you're running that much, I don't like running that much, so I need to know the proper way to do it.
Yeah.
But the discipleship that's happening in that, and with our kids, we always sit down at the kitchen table. We always talk about the Word of God, and so like not a knock against youth groups or church or anything like that. My kids get discipled at home.
Yeah, that's supplemental. I mean,
yeah, that's supplemental.
As dads, especially, like we have to be the primary ministers in
Oh,
our kids'
yes.
lives. Just like, I mean, we can't say, okay, well, it's the youth pastor's job or the children's pastor's job or the life group leader's job or whatever. Yes, they're coming alongside of us as parents, but it's our job to do that, on a regular basis, and getting our kids engaged in those spiritual discussions and having those kinds of conversations the same way we are in breaking down game film or all that kind of thing. So let me ask you, as you said, obviously you're a dad no matter where you are. But at the same time, is there things that you've had to do personally to maybe like keep yourself from becoming coach on the way home, or like after the game?
Oh man,
like what are some things that you personally do, Jon? Because you are competitive. You are competitive and very passionate dude. So like what do you do? I'm sure Marcy keeps you in check as well.
Oh man. Yeah, let me just speak to it. So my wife, dude, she is literally like, there's times. So let's say Leslie had a terrible game, and we're in the car, and it's silent, and now I like to talk. So I'm like, okay, nope.
How much time do I gotta let go before
I'm not gonna say nothing? And I'm like, Leslie, you should have. Blah, 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 blah. And Mom's like, okay, Jon, you got 1 minute. All right, she's done. Build her up. And then I'm like, but you know what? You did a great job boxing out. You did a good job rebounding, And I remember leaving USA workouts last year, because Jon was trying out for Team USA.
Yeah.
And we were in Illinois. And, just going through the workout, I thought he did okay. But he's like, Daddy, do you think I made it? And I said, absolutely not. And Jon is a tremendous athlete.
Yeah.
But it was just his preparation wasn't there. His focus wasn't there. And there are a lot of really good kids there. And in that moment, he began to start crying. I said, Jon, let me tell you something, bro. I'm like, whether you make USA or not doesn't change the way that I love you. I love you and I'm proud of you, whether you make this team or not. I could really care less. This is more about the experience of you getting around other kids that are really good. If you say you want to play MLB, some of these kids are going to be playing MLB. So you need to see what it looks like. And he cried a little bit. And after that, he knows, well, game's over.
Yeah.
Fortnite. I mean, like, he just like, man, okay, it's over. Like, all right, if I played horrible, who cares? Like, next.
Yeah.
And as a parent, sometimes it's hard to turn that switch on and off, But I think at the end of the day, if you do parent hard when it comes to the sports and that kind of stuff, because behind the scenes, we all do, because we're competitive and we want our kids to do well.
Yeah.
Out of fear of them missing out or not getting an opportunity. But you got to build those kids back up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the words that you said there are so important, especially from a dad, to hear, I'm proud of you. And I'll never forget, like, this was probably an old book that I read a long time ago it was a very simple statement, but when I read it, I was like, I need to make sure that I tell my boys that no matter what they're doing, at whatever level. And it was the words that, you know what? I just love watching you play. I just love watching you play, because, because it doesn't mean they play bad, doesn't mean they play good. It's just, I just love watching you play. And the confidence that gives your kid, that, and the reality is that sometimes life gets too busy and we can't show up to every game. We can't show up to everything. And in many ways, I mean, our kids probably think it sometimes that they themselves, and we gotta be careful as parents that we don't make them the idol. and make their sports career our idol, right?
We need to talk. I mean, I think we should speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, that's good, dude. Because I see so many parents, like, man, I know some parents that spend north of 30, 40 grand a year on their kids training and tournaments and development. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like, our family, we got 5 kids and we're a sports family. We spend a lot on that.
Yeah. So it's not so much about the amount, because I mean,
But it's the idolatry
Sure, yeah.
to where now you're taking this kid and you're elevating them on this pedestal in your life. And now every decision that you make is based off of their happiness and what they want. You know how many kids I've seen? I'm like, bro, you got 6 brand new $400 baseball bats. Guess what? You can't swing either one of them. So we can keep on buying them, but it's like, okay, like, I understand, like, let's do things for our kids. But when them becoming, like, I mean, think about how many times we see a kid that gets put in front of a wife or a kid that's put in front of a husband. It's not supposed to be that way. My kids, they know. And I'm like, hey, I'm talking to my wife right now. Please go over there and count something. Like, hey, mommy, the smoke show. She is number one. I will deal with you in a minute. She is number one. And my kids know that.
Yeah.
You can ask my kids right now, who's number one in daddy's life? Mommy.
Yeah.
Who's number 2? Us.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
know.
Well, dude, hey, we've got to start wrapping, bringing this plane down for a landing here real quick. But I want to ask you this question, because as someone who is, you started and you're building your business, your kids are at a very, very busy stage of their life, right? I mean, you're trying to stay focused on your number one and grow your marriage and all of that. But I know at the center of you is wanting to make sure your relationship with Christ is solid.
Oh, 100%.
Because that's the foundation of that. Everything else is to be built upon. And so I just want to know for you, because I love hearing just different ideas of what's working for different people, of how they are able to keep Jesus at the center. Now, none of us are perfect at it. But what does that mean to you? And then what does that look like for you?
One thing I say to my kids is the process over the destination. Because what happens when you get to the destination? You just set a new one and you start chasing that thing, right?
Yeah.
And so the process, man, what the Lord has done in our lives with walking by faith. The Bible says that the just shall live by faith, right? The Bible says that the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. And it's that constant walking with him through the hard stuff, facing hard challenges. Man, launching this business with no certainty was hard.
Yeah.
But I'm closer to God now than I've ever been. I mean, I think this, like, that spirit that the entrepreneurs have, man, of just launching out in your own thing, man, God has to be there with you to help you take the next step and the next step. I remember my dad telling me this. He said, the Lord never said that he'd be a floodlight into your life, but he did say he'd be a lamp into your feet. Meaning he's going to illuminate one step at a time. And I take that step and I'll stand there and I wait for the next step. And then I go to the next one, and then I go to the next one. Because if he illuminated our whole entire lives, we would just run ahead without him. And so I think this process of, parenting is hard. Being a husband is hard. Being a friend is hard. Being a man in America is hard.
Yeah.
And so walking with Jesus every single day and just slowing things down, my devotional time in the mornings, I take every single morning and I make sure that my kids see me reading and studying and listening to podcasts and diving in his word. They have to see me doing it, because that's what I seen with my dad.
Yeah.
He'd have a cup of black coffee, no creamer. He'd have, the King James Bible that was like this thick.
Yeah.
And I would come and I would sit down and watch him read the Bible. And that's where my love and my passion for it came, because if it could change my dad, who was very abusive to my mom, and just a monster perfectionist guy. And then the more he started to read that word, it changed him. And I watched my dad turn it from a monster to one of my favorite people in the entire world. And you know, him and my my stepmom, I mean, they're married over 20 years. So
Yeah. That's, and you know, even just the way that you like, we talked about the modeling and how important that was for you, but and you saw the transformation process. And the truth is that the transformation process is always working.
always.
God is continuing to transform you, and you're allowing, you know, your kids to see that and saying, listen, Dad is not perfect. I mean, you're close, John.
Not even
But
remotely close.
that's not perfect. But that's that's where the importance of keeping Jesus at the center, because I'm always going to be a work in progress, and he's always going to be, you know, pouring his transformation power into my life, as I center my day, as my life, you know, around his. So, all right, one more question, and this is going to maybe seem a little bit kind of a like, I don't mean this to be self-serving, but I'm hopeful that it's serving to other people. Is you were a part of the inaugural men's retreat that we did last year. And so we're going to be putting another couple of those on here this year. And so I just would love for you to speak to, you know, it's a 23-hour commitment, which, you know, that's less than
intensive. Man, it was awesome.
But it was just like 15, 16 dudes for 23 hours. What would you tell another guy about the retreat and why they should, you know, want to be a part of it?
Oh man, it's easy. You know, this men's retreat was actually the place when the Lord was speaking to me and he said, it's time to go. And there's so many times where it's hard for us as men to get away from work and to get away from the cell phone. And I remember you like, hey guys, call your wife, tell her you love her, tell your kids you love them, and put your phones away. I need you present.
Yeah.
And I love that challenge that you put out there for us, because every dude there was present. And I mean, now I have lifelong friends out of that group of guys that were just going like, hey, John, you can do it. And if you can't do it, call me and I'm going to encourage you and let you know that you can do it all over again. Yeah. And, you know, and so seeing like, you know, being able to go in those 23 hours and just be with dudes. And I'm not talking about like these like wimpy men that, you know, that don't stand for anything, jellyback type dude. I'm talking about like, these are like high level dudes that are really walking this thing out and figuring it out. And then you also have guys that are brand new to faith.
Yeah.
That are just saying, you know, I'm figuring this thing out. And I remember, do you remember me riding, like coming down to that? And I'm like, Tom, I'm getting ready to turn around.
Yeah. So here's funny. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
On the way down, actually, I think I called you. And I think I said, hey, can you bring a football or something like that? Because we're going to have a little free time where we can throw a football or whatever. And then I was like, are you excited? And you were like, well, to be honest.
I mean, I was worried, dude. I was nervous because
Marcy said, what's your problem? And she said something to you that morning. She's like, why do you seem all nervous?
Yeah, I'm like, because I'm like, why am I being invited to this deal with this high caliber of dudes? I mean, because there were some dudes there, like really good guys that have accomplished great things in life. They're doing well. I mean, they're leading their families, you know, and being able to come into that atmosphere. I had to really swallow my own low self-esteem, I guess you could say, because I'm like, why am I here? Like, I'm not where any of these guys are in life. And then you came in and you just laid the stage, you laid the foundation. You're like, look, man, it is level here. Come in, let's get down to business and let's talk. And man, and everything that I got from that was what I needed. So I would encourage, I mean, I don't care what the cost is. if I'm invited, I will be back. I'll be back this year because it was that transformative.
Well, and one of the things that was just so apparent to me was that the guys came in. Yeah, none of us, I mean, myself included, as Jason and I were putting it together, we didn't know exactly what to expect. We just said, okay, God, you're going to give a lamp to our feet. We're going to take one step and then just see what he does. But what was so beautiful for me to see was how, like you just said, there was guys that have been following Jesus for a long time, guys that are still kind of checking out the faith, guys that are really struggling right now in their life, guys that are having a great deal of success in their life right now.
The vulnerability.
Oh my goodness. White collar workers, blue collar workers, all different denominations, but yet there was just this relationship focused. The relationship with Jesus and relationship with others, and so many friendships. Guys came in as strangers, and they left as friends.
Right.
And I know that you had a lot of great friendships birthed out of that time.
I'm telling you.
And so anyway, since this is this episode is going to drop here in the next little bit, and we're getting prepared for this retreat. I know that there's going to be guys that maybe listen and say, hey, I want to know more about that. And then so I encourage you to go check that out at the website, because we just know that God uses it. God just uses it just to further us in our relationship with him, to give us relationship with others. And that's one of the things that we talk a lot about here on the podcast. We talk a lot about it just at ResGen as a whole, is that we have a lot of men that they're lonely. They're just going, and they feel like they're alone, and they're the only one that is facing, this challenge or that challenge. And the interesting thing is that every single one of those guys, when they stepped into that space, regardless of where they're at in their life, regardless of how successful they are, however they want to define that, is every single one of them actually said, like, I don't know why I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like I belong here. But then within moments, they're like, oh, I belong here, and God has me here for a purpose. Right. And so that's such an amazing word. So thank you for that. I didn't even tell you I was going to ask you that, but I'm so glad that, that was just something that I just felt like the Lord maybe would want you to share a little bit about.
It was a springboard.
Yeah.
It was a springboard for me into the next season. And so thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, brother, so we end our time here on the podcast with just something we call the final word. So it's just, 30, 60, 90 seconds of whatever you feel like the Lord has laid on your heart. Could be a scripture, it could be just a word of encouragement for guys. It could be just something that maybe the Lord's been sharing with you that you feel like you want to share with others. But what do you got for a final word for us here today?
Yeah, well, the Bible says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And I want every guy, gal, whoever, I can say gal because I'm from the South, that's listening to this pod, man, to know that you're called and you have a purpose. And there's a people group that God has called you to, and there's a purpose that you're here to fulfill. And we need you. God needs you. I need you. Tom needs you. Just like, the men's summit, I think is something that is so needed for this day and time. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for saying yes, because there's lives and families being transformed from it. That's all I got, man.
Well, brother, I love you. I'm so proud of you. I'm grateful for the longevity of our friendship. And we've traveled a journey. You traveled further because you drove east and then you came back. But we've gone on a journey together for so many years, and I'm just so proud of you. And truthfully, I know that I've said this so many times to you. You talked about it earlier, but I know that when I call, you pick up. You pray with me. You encourage me. You've given me prophetic words when I need to hear them. You've shared with me insights that I needed to hear at that exact moments. And I just remember, you've been at almost every men's summit that we've had, except for when you were out east and you watched online. But I remember early on, and you said, I think you're at the very first one. We had 123 guys, and you're like, I can't wait till this is in the Premier Center someday.
I remember saying that.
I said, you are absolute bonkers. I'm never doing one of these again.
You've actually said that almost every year, because I'm like, dude, it's time, man. It's time. This thing is growing. It's exploding. Like, it's time for the Premier Center.
And here we are, 10th anniversary at the Premier Center, and you spoke it into existence 10 years ago, for crying out loud.
Hey, you did the work, man.
But I'm so appreciative. Thank you for always being such a word of encouragement, God, to me. And this is the Giving Life Podcast, men whose life in Christ gives life to others. And you have given me so much life over the years. And so I'm just grateful for you. I love you. And I can't wait to continue watching God use you in powerful ways, and how he's going to grow Setzer Elite, and how you're going to continue to grow people from the inside out. So I love you.
Love you too, man. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Giving Life Podcast with my friend Jon Setzer today. If you enjoyed our conversation and found it helpful, I encourage you to share with others who might enjoy it as well. If you want to connect with Jon, you can do so and find him at Setzer Elite on X, and on Instagram at Setzer_Elite. All right, that's all for today, everybody. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next time on the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast. Until then, continue being men whose life in Christ gives life to others.